Hello. I'm going to do the clue review for not last Thursday because of the holidays, but the Thursday before Mystery Grape. So I know it's been a while, but hopefully the clue review will kind of jog the memory. The wine was Sangiovese from Chianti Classico. Now, for those that played the game and going through the clues, especially the first 6 clues, which are the flavors and structure clues, if you got to Sangiovese, boom, that's great. You don't necessarily need to nail, it's a Chianti Classico versus a Brunello versus a Vino Nobile. You just really wanted to get more to the grape. To get the region, that's more the context clues 7 through 10, and then like at the end of clue 6 when I talk about quality and price, those are more the theory aspect of it. But the method to my madness of why I wanted to go with Chianti Classico for Sangiovese and kind of drill down into that is because looking at the past wines that were featured on the D3 exam for the diploma of the last 15 years, Sangiovese pops up often, as part of the Italy country flight and also a Tuscany region flight. And in the last 15 years or so, 8 times Sangiovese was featured, half of them was Chianti Classico. Only once was a Brunello. Once was a Rufina, Selva Piana, which is a very, very good producer of Chianti Rufina, and then 2 times a basic Chianti. So obviously that doesn't mean things can't change in the future. The examiners will put on whatever they want to, and anything that's mentioned in the diploma text is completely fair game. But what that does tell you is that if, when you're tasting wines, doing your blind tasting studies, everybody has a limited amount of time and a limited amount of money to spend on these wines to taste. I would probably err on focusing on Chianti Classico. Brunello, you definitely want to try Brunello. Brunello can get kind of expensive, and some Chianti Classicos can get expensive too. But just thinking about where you're going to allocate your limited resources, Chianti Classico is where I would focus a good amount of my attention to. So let's go to the clues and do the review of that for the flavor and structure clues and kind of see how that would narrow us towards Sangiovese. So clue number 1, sour red cherry. So red fruit, I particularly went sour cherry because this is very classic for Sangiovese. You want to think of acid. You want to think of that tartness. That's a key component of the nature of the grape. Red plum, mulberry, which is kind of also tart berry, kind of playing on that theme there. Earthy, wild berry. It's also a little bit more that red fruit, kind of continuing. We're a very red fruit dominant grape and wine. Clue number 4, fennel and earth. So kind of old world, savory, got that fennel. It's got a little earthiness to it as well, but also a little subtle sweet floralness. Clue number 5, clay, baked earth. There is a dustiness to Sangiovese that is very, very distinctive. It does kind of taste a little bit like you're in Tuscany and that baked earth in this beautiful area. Clue 6, tomato leaf. The kind of herbal greenness kind of aspect with tomato leaf. That's another classic one to Sangiovese. Structure clues. Mid-ruby to mid-garnet. So for the most part, for a lot of blind tasting exams, you tend to get fairly younger vintages. So you won't necessarily you don't want to expect garnet. So you want to think more of that ruby. Obviously, Sangiovese ages really well, and you can get to the garnet. But you think of like the logistics of examiners putting together a wine or putting together the list of wines to be tasted across the globe. So they have to procure a good quantity of that wine. And most likely, what they're going to be able to procure is the more recent vintages versus looking for an age examples. So if you're going to err more towards expecting a youthful example of things. Medium to pronounced intensity. So Sangiovese can be very, very pronounced, but it's also a really finicky grape. It's one that needs a very long growing season. It buds early and ripens late. So that long growing season, that tells you that it needs the right conditions in order to really give you intensity. You can't just crank up the heat in a warm area and plant it in a warm area to get it to ripen earlier, because then you lose intensity. It's like, I call it a lasagna grape. And if you want to just go down a rabbit hole for a good 15, 20 minutes. Go to YouTube and Google 100-hour lasagna recipe. There's a gentleman, Alvin Azo, that does these all like really, really long recipes that makes delicious food that you want to try, but you want to think, do I really want to commit 100 hours of my life to make a lasagna? But watching it, it really makes some things click when you think about building intensity of flavors. Think of that tomato sauce simmering on the stove. If you just crank up the heat, yes, you'll get it done quicker, but it's not going to be as flavorful and as intense as if you gave it that long, slow simmer. It's that same aspect when it comes to building intensity in grapes on it. So a long, slow growing season will build you more intensity. That's why you're going to have that variance for a lot of grape varieties. Continue with the structure clues. High acidity, high, sandy, coarse, firm, tannins. A lot of those descriptions will work with Sangiovese. Sandy is my favorite, kind of sandpaper. One of the things that came across in one of my study groups when I was prepping for my exam was that the tannins of Sangiovese feels a lot like when a cat is licking your hand. That kind of sandpaper nature of that cat's tongue. If you have a cat, try it. It resonated with me because, like, yes, it is kind of like that. Then medium to full body, and context clues, very good to outstanding. I know from some folks that, especially some folks in Italy that are very familiar with all the different types of Chiantis and Chianti Classicos they can get, it's not always going to be very good to outstanding with what you have there locally. But when you think about what is being exported out and imported into the UK, into the US, an importer is not going to necessarily want the bottom of the barrel stuff. If they're going to take the time and effort to import a Chianti Classico versus just a basic Chianti, they're probably going to focus more on the better quality stuff. That's just kind of business logistics. And then mid to premium price. These are from the diploma text, and this is kind of the range of examples that they would say is most typical that you would see on that kind of export market. So that is that for the clues. I wanted to give a shout out for a really, really good study tool that I absolutely love. It had a great section on Chianti Classico, as well as Brunello, the Sommelier's Atlas to Taste, Rajat Parr, who's and Jordan Mackay. Really, really good book. Also a great section on champagne. And for those of you that are studying for D4 coming up next month, January here on the 19th, really good stuff. It focuses on European regions, so Germany, France, Italy, Spain, but definitely a good book, really endorse. Last thing before I leave you, we've got on our website, elevagewinecoaching.com, our webinars for January with that. Speaking of champagne. The next class is this coming Sunday it's going to be Sunday instead of regular Saturdays for me because Saturday is New Year's Day and I don't want to do a class on New Year's Day. I'll be hungover. But on Sunday, I'll totally be sober. And I'm going to do a battle royale. English sparkling wines versus champagne. And again, thinking of the D4 exam coming up for folks for sparkling wines, we're going to look at the viticulture, winemaking, and marketing, wine business aspects, difference between English sparkling wines and champagne. So if you got a theory question comparing those two, that's a lot of the stuff that we're going to cover for that. And then other classes we have, we're going to do a port class. Again, talking about blind tasting and connecting it with theory to help folks that are studying for the D5 Fortified exam. Also this month, January. I'm waiting for the new year. 2021, just suck it. Let's get to 2022. Let's get to January. And then we will have another champagne class, which getting a little bit more geeky about the regions, the sub-regions of Champagne. Again, thinking about theory questions that you could have. And then after the exam, then we're going to open things up a little bit with the topics. Noelle's going to do a really great class about the different viticulture systems, biodynamic, sustainable. I'm going to do something about rosé, and then also sweet wines. So full slate of classes up on elevagewinecoaching.com. Go check them out with that. And with that, I will see you guys later. Take care.